So as Jenny mentioned, I'm going to go over the group and personnel management system. And again, as Jenny mentioned, you may have already gotten some of these emails. If you're not, we're going to have just a little bit of a walkthrough of how this system works for you all as a Biocurator. And I can certainly help to answer any questions the best that I can. I just want to give a little bit of background to start. The group and personnel management system, the goal of this was really to provide the centralized system for storing and managing information across ClinGen and its groups. As you all may be well aware, we are somewhere around 2,000 individuals that are part of ClinGen now, and we are growing day by day. And so trying to manage and make sure that we understand how each of our individuals and our groups are operating becomes more complex with expert panels, clinical domain working groups, but also those personnels. And we know that several of you actually participate in multiple groups. So the goal of this system was really to help us to organize and provide this centralized resource. So when we think about groups, these would be expert panels, the working groups. These members, we want to keep a track of their roles, their permissions to certain documentation related to the group. It's also helpful for administrative workflows, like looking specifically at expert panel application processes. These have traditionally been done on Word documents that are submitted, but with this new system, we're making them web-based applications, which are going to allow for a much more streamlined approach to submitting applications, getting training in COI across the memberships, as well as doing different annual updates. The great part about it is when we now think about personnel, which all of you are part of that, it allows the ability for you all as ClinGen members to keep up to date with your own user information. So you would now have access to this group and personnel management. So for instance, if your email changes, you can give that change that's displayed, right? And then coordinators and individuals over multiple groups can see that new access. If your affiliation changes, or even if your position changes, you can give all of that information, as well as for you personally to maintain your conflict of interest disclosures and other roles. So the group and personnel management was officially launched last year in helping with the expert panel application process. But this new release just on February 14th allowed you all as personnel to be able to enter information as well as that expert panel application and annual updates. So really, when we think about the value that's being added by this system, again, it serves as that central registry for ClinGen members. So it will replace several existing independent methods of tracking, so we can streamline that. Those workflows for coordinators will also be streamlined and allow them to pick individuals and membership for their expert panels from drop-down menus to make sure that we are picking the right people and not duplicating efforts. It does have those structured data for easier reporting. As we mentioned, every year we do annual updates for our expert panels and work groups. So this makes this easier for us in the future. It also will serve as a central repository for those applications. And as we mentioned, automating those conflict of interest. So hopefully all of you have already received or should be receiving by March 15th an invitation to be invited to have access to this group and personnel management system. I do want to note, if you have not already received this email, first and foremost, check your junk and spam folders. This is coming from gpm_support@clinicalgenome.org, and I understand if it is not already in your context, your institutions may put it into your junk. Another thing to think about is if your institution has restriction on emails, you may have a specific quarantine folder, so please also check that. Otherwise, if you have not received an invitation yet for your specific expert panel, I would direct you to contact your coordinator just to see whether or not they may have accidentally forgot you, or they may still be in the process of adding you to the system. Again, another thing that you could potentially do is add the gpm_support@clinicalgenome.org to your contacts. That will also prevent it, hopefully, from going to your junk or spam folders. So once you click on that link that's within the email, it will take you to the GPM and pre-fill your registration code. And all you would need to do is say submit, and we will prompt you with a little bit of the steps you're going to have to go through in order to create this. So what's nice between that email and here, it will tell you your name. This happens to be a user called ClinGen, and that you were invited as part of a specific expert panel. Now, what I want to preface is you only should be getting one invite, even if you've been over multiple expert panels, you only need to click on one invite to be able to get into this system, and we will be able to consolidate your expert panels. If you've received more than one and it's to different emails, again, contact your expert panel coordinator because we don't want to have duplicate entries for the same person as best we can. Once you get started, you're going to move through in creating your account. So if you've received, again, those multiple emails, contact your expert panel coordinator. You'll see the email that you were registered under, and you can create a password. Again, if there's any issue with that particular email, you can contact the EP coordinator to update that, or you can move through this process yourself and then update your email accordingly. Now, once you get through creating your password, you're brought to a stage where you can actually look at your profile as the user. So again, we'll have some pre-filled information based on what was entered within the system to start with. But as you notice, you're going to be able to add your institution, credentials, biography, address, whatever you would like to do here, even your time zone and city. These are information that are not required other than your first, last name and the email, but you're happy to use this as you wish. We do hope to be able to use some of this information in the future to be able to give this to the website where you all have really nice profiles to indicate other affiliations and institutions. Other things such as address and country will not be used with anyone without your express consent, right? But if you're filling it here, coordinators may have I think you only have the ability to see this at this point. So as we mentioned, that an EP coordinator would have added your email, but only you as a user and a system admin, which are very few people, can edit or update this information. So you really have the power in your hands now to be able to update your email and institutions here. Just to show you a little bit, if we were going to add an institution, I want to bring your attention to there are pre-filled drop-down menu here. As you begin to type, it will start to restrict for the current institutions that we already have available over our membership. If your institution is not currently listed, all you need to do is click this Add Your Institution button here. You do want to check your spelling because it is going to come in however you've spelled it, but that is how you can add your institution. It will open up this bubble here. You can put in the name, any abbreviation, if there is a web page URL, and then the country, and save that. Moving on, once you've gone and created your profile and added whatever information you wanted to begin with, it will take you straight now to the conflict of interest for the expert panel that has added you as a member. It will look similar to what you're seeing on the right-hand side here. I do want to make a note that each expert panel will require a COI from you, so you may have multiple COIs, so please fill out all of them. It isn't, once you filled out one, it's applicable to all. It really is tied to your expert panel at that point, just on the disclosure based on the genes that are associated with that expert panel. So once you've done that, you can come back into the GPM site or Group and Personnel Management. And once you log in any other time after this, it will take you to your dashboard. You'll see your particular IDs that we're using on the back end just to make sure everyone's coordinated. And it will tell you any notifications of pending items that you have to complete. So in this instance, I had not filled out that COI yet, just so you can see that note, but it will tell you to complete that COI disclosure. You'll also have 3 different tabs here. It will list all of the groups you're a part of. So if you happen to be in multiple groups, you will see that here. And this status means that the status of your particular expert panel. And we'll go through the other tabs that we have here. What I do want to bring your attention to, though, is that over on the right-hand side, you're going to see 2 buttons here. The one with the question mark is a link to the FAQ document that has been made for the Group and Personnel Management. It does include instructional text, and it also has some videos. So again, if you're a person who likes to read the text, it's there. If you're a visual person and you like to see examples, we also did our best to have those videos for you. So if you go to click that info button, it will take you to this Google Doc. As I said, it should look like this, ClinGen GPM FAQ, and they'll have all of the information with text, with images, and as well as videos on some of them. I also want to mention, right, because you have to log in to get to this. If you want a little bit of the FAQ before you've logged in to learn the system, a link to this frequently asked questions is also on the ClinGen Google sites. This is within the Education Coordination and Training, or the ECT workgroup page. So please ask and contact your GSEP coordinator or even your expert panel coordinator to see if they can provide you this link, and it will take you to this document you can read ahead of time if you want. So if we were to go back to the dashboard, and we're really looking now on your second tab of your info, this is again all of that information you had the ability to add in the very beginning. If you didn't add it, no worries. You can go and click the little pencil button icon on the right-hand side, and you can go and edit all of your profile here. So again, you can change the institution if you need to update that, any credentials. If you were a graduate student and you have now graduated and you're a postgrad or a postdoc, you can even do that. Or if you've just recently gotten any type of certifications, you can add that to your credentials. It's especially important, if you've moved and want to let people know. One thing that's really important that I do want to remind you all is that if you do update your email address, you now have updated the email login you will use to get into the system. So again, if you change this, no problem. It's great. We want you to be able to do that, but you would no longer be able to use the original email to log into the system. You will have to remember that new system email. That may also present you to making a new password, so you can use the forget password button to go ahead and create a new one. And that last tab, COIs, it just shows you a complete list of your conflict of interest disclosures, and you are able to click on those and look over them and be able to update them as needed. Certainly, you'd also want to convey to your expert panel coordinator whether you've had to update COIs. We do ask for these on an annual basis, and so most of you will hear around March of next year, as long as you're part of us still, which we hope you are in expert panels, that we would have you update that COI. Obviously, though, if you have any new conflicts that occur in the middle of that annual update, again, you can update your COI, creating the link here, but also be able to let your coordinators know that you have new disclosures to make. So you might be asking yourself, well, what happens if this system has an issue, if I'm really having trouble specifically with the system, refreshing, entering information, it's not saving or entering? You do have this secondary button that is a little bug. This is our users to report any bugs or system issues that you have. So if you were to click this button, it would open up a new cell. It's already pre-capturing the URL here, but you're welcome to add a different one. The type of issue that you're having is here. There's a drop-down menu where you can say the severity. Is it really blocking you from doing your work? Or do you see that there's maybe a typo or something unsightly? And then you can give a little bit of the description if needed and submit it. This report goes directly to our development team and our developer, and so we will try to adjust that as best as we can. So I do just want to let you know briefly about some future enhancements that we plan for the group and personnel management system. We will start cataloging additional ClinGen group membership. As I mentioned in the beginning, this really started with opening up to gene curation and variant curation expert panels, but we do want to move out to our other working groups and their membership. We also plan to catalog some demographic information on each of you. This may include your different backgrounds, where you heard about ClinGen, and just help us to understand the representation we have across ClinGen and to ensure that we are being as diverse as we can. This will also help us with knowing how many countries are currently contributing to our efforts and those different educational backgrounds. So that's more to come in the future, but we are excited to think about we can track some of these. We do already do this with volunteers in the CCDB if that's how you came from us in the Community Curation Working Group. Some other future plans will be to integrate this group and personnel management and other ClinGen systems. So for instance, as I mentioned, those profiles and information updates you're giving on institution affiliations might be really useful as we go and publish on the website. It may also help with the interoperability between interfaces. So for instance, if you update your email, that may allow that email to be updated across all of ClinGen systems to help for logins. And also we'll have some documentation of your training. So this is so you can see when's the last time you had training, or if you happen to be trained over multiple curation activities, for instance, gene and variant, that documentation would also be recorded within the group and personnel management system. Again, that helps just across different expert panels as you all volunteer. So if you have any issues with the group and personnel management system, you do have a help desk. So you can use that bug button we talked about a few slides back. You can also send an email, and I apologize, I probably should have taken out the hyperlink, but it's gpm_support@clinicalgenome.org, and that will come to our support group. I do want to emphasize, though, that if you have any questions specifically about your expert panel or group membership status, or even your COI for the group, you do want to reach out rather to your expert panel coordinator rather than the GPM. They're going to be able to help you more about getting you added onto specific expert panels. And by default, you can find their emails listed under the expert panel pages on clinicalgenome.org if you are unsure about your specific coordinator's address. And I'll pause here before we move on to the second half, just to take any questions that you all may have about this group and personnel management system.
Hi, Courtney, it's Jenny. I do see a question in the chat. So this is the question. As part of this project, have you considered creating a badge or group on LinkedIn so we can advertise our contribution there too?
That's a really good point. Certainly we can put that down as additional things to think about. That might be rather on the website's side, right? With the profile that you would have directly on the website where you can maybe be able to link, but I think it's a really great suggestion. So thank you for that.
Any other questions for Courtney? Courtney, this is just so exciting to see. I know it's been a huge amount of work, but really is going to be a tremendous help for keeping everyone organized and allowing the curators to update their information. So really terrific.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. And we hope that it, at least makes a little bit of things easier that you're working through and helping to centralize as a resource. So we hope for it to grow in the future and be, really a helpful resource. So please feel free to, send some emails if you have some requests or suggestions. And hopefully you've all already been able to get on the system and use it pretty easily. I do want to thank, though, this is definitely a village that took all of this effort here. And so I want to give acknowledgements for all of the individuals here working. And I realized I forgot two of the main important people here, which are TJ Ward, who is our developer who did this. I took it from another slide he was actually presenting, and Danielle Esrady. So I apologize for their names not being on there and double checking that. But also definitely we had a lot of people who helped to test the system ahead of time. So we're really thankful for everyone on that team. And so moving through, I just want to give some announcements that you may have been receiving on some of these calls and just a little bit of an update. So this really is concerning the display of pre-curation data on the website. So I do want to emphasize this is really important for those of you that are on gene curation expert panels at this point, and that this is going to be presented on behalf of both the Gene Curation Working Group and website team. And so it really is just a friendly reminder. We do have this whole process of lumping and splitting where you are defining the disease entity. And this is a fair amount of work that you all are doing, biocurators across GCEPs. And this is what we also call that precuration data. And we want to let you know this will be made publicly available on the ClinGen website in spring of 2022. We want to acknowledge all of the work that goes into this whole process here by being able to show it. Not only that, we know that this is currently captured in a structured manner. This is within the gene tracking system. But with this data, it will be able to allow us to provide links of the OMIM information that directly involves that gene curation expert panel. And I'll show you that in just a bit with some screenshots. I do recognize that as biocurators, some of you may already have access to the GeneTracker or the gene tracking system to enter this data yourselves. And other gene curation expert panels, it may be that your coordinator or designated individual is doing this. But I do want to just remind you all to please check with your GCEP coordinators to make sure all the information is being captured appropriately for every gene curation, because this will start to be published again in spring with a target date of within April. So as you're doing these precurations, make sure you give all of that information into this system. We also want to be sure that you check for typos and incomplete sentences, and we'll show you why as I give you a little bit of a preview of what this will look like on the ClinGen website. So for this lumping and splitting display and the precurations, if you coming and starting within April at some point, if you go to put in your favorite gene on the ClinGen gene search, you will be brought back to a gene page. You're going to see what you typically see, which is the gene disease mode of inheritance. But what I want you to notice is there's going to be a new icon button in the lower left-hand corner right underneath the gene name. This arrow icon means this is talking about lumping and splitting. You may see other icons such as people, which is talking about secondary contributors. So we're now going to provide a little bit of extra information for those of you that are curious about this information. So if I were to click that button on that screen, the gene screen here, you would also be able to see that lumping and splitting information directly. We have a little bit of a notification of what this process is. We have links to the current guidelines in the lumping and splitting working group page. But as you can observe, we're now talking about what were those MEM phenotype numbers that were included, what were excluded at the time you evaluated, the date that you did this, what type of curation you did, the rationales based on, again, the lumping and splitting guidance, and if you have any supporting PubMed IDs and notes. So this is the notes on the rationale. All of this will be published here. So again, please be sure that you are checking all these PMIDs that they're correct. This is going to provide links to those PMIDs. And when you hover over, it will show you the name of the reference. So the first author, last author, first author and year, etc. We'll also see those notes on rationale, so make sure it's something that you want people to read. And obviously, as you go through, you want to make sure that if you have indicated you are curating a lumped entity or a single gene disease entity from this list, that you do have a MEM phenotype. And so if I were to go through, I'm going to go back to, two screens. So if we were, I showed you what would happen if you open up here. That was the slide we'll go by in a second. But if you were to come to this report date, you would now see this screen. It's going to be changing because the full gene disease data is going to be displayed. So you'll see the summary tab first, which will show that typical matrix, and you'll be able to look at all of the great evidence that you all capture on gene curation. But you'll have a tab for lumping and splitting. So this will also repeat that information. So there are two ways to get to this again. So just make sure you are filling out this information, or the designated person for your gene curation expert panel is doing that. Now, what you might see again are these different areas in blue, which indicate hyperlinks or info buttons. We do talk about each of these to present to the user what is this information. But if they wanted to learn a little bit more about the curation, we have created an info page that discusses lumping and splitting and how each one of these types are chosen. You're not seeing the full page, you can scroll down, but if you're interested in learning more about that, you can reach it through those hyperlinks. And as I mentioned, again, please make sure you're filling out this data. This is an example where there was data that was not filled out. What I want to point your attention to here is the curation type for this specific example said curated a lump disease entity. And if it was lumped, it means you've picked more than one MEM phenotype, but you can see there's no MEM phenotype here. So there's a little bit of disconnect. So again, make sure that you are checking what types are being picked and that all the phenotypes are being addressed accurately. Where do you find these? Well, in the gene tracking system, when you're going through the process for your specific gene and your affiliation, there are different tabs here. If you are picking the phenotype, you have the ability to check these boxes on the right side. So this is important again for you all biocurators who are entering themselves, coordinators or designees from the GSEP. You also will enter in that rationale. That rationale is what is carried through to the website. Those supporting PMIDs field is here, and then the providing your rationale, this is also being published to the website. So this is most of that data. The curation type tab is giving you whether it's that lumped entity or single entity. So again, make sure you're filling these out so that they can appropriately be published on the website. And again, just recognizing the website team with Phil Weller on this and GeneTracker with TJ Ward to make sure that we can give all of this appropriate information between these systems and also the gene curation working group stakeholders and members for this work. And I can take any questions that you all have on this particular topic as well.
Thank you, Courtney. Are there any questions? Are any questions about the GeneTracker or lumping and splitting process?
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I don't know, I've done several precurations and I've had a couple of lumping decisions made. I don't know that I've been directed to put that into the database there because these were done a while back. Do we need to go back to prior decisions and revisit those and make sure that those are entered?
It would be good to check with your expert panel coordinator. That's a great question, especially if they're previous ones and you know that you've published that final gene disease validity classification. Because that's where, once it's published to the website, that's when we're pulling through that lumping and splitting. So it will not be shown ahead of a gene curation final classification being published. So if you have any of those, definitely check with your expert panel coordinator to make sure those are updated appropriately. Really great question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I can actually give some follow-up on this. Brendan, you're in the syndromic disorders GSEP, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so I see that Marwa has written that as the coordinators of that group are actually entering the information in the GeneTracker.
Great.
So it sounds like that's taken care of.
And one thing I can say is we are working on a project where we are basically going to be federating the GeneTracker and the GCI. What that means is we're going to create more pattern workflow where the pre-curation has got to be done and finished before you can go into the GCI. Currently, you could go into the GCI separately. That will allow us to make sure that this information is captured. It will allow us to get an instantaneous read on your GDIU UMID, which most of you may not know what it is, but when you go into the GCI, there is a specific ID for that record. So we will get that instantaneously instead of on the back end. And that might present options for you all to actually get access to the gene tracking system to do curations. If and when that happens, not if, when that happens, we will be doing a lot of workshops to train you on how to use these systems. So it might be something pending, but again, for right now, you may have a designated person, so definitely contact your expert panel coordinator. Great. Does anyone else have any other questions, group and personnel management, or on the display of the lumping and splitting to the website? I hope you all have gotten invitations now, but definitely if you have not received one yet, please contact your expert panel coordinator.
Great, thank you so much, Courtney. It's really exciting to see this work being made available on the website. That's really exciting, so thank you. And as always, everyone, please feel free just to email with any questions. You know, happy to follow up if there's anything that you need to know or any topics that we'd like to hear about on this call. And as usual, I will make the video available. I will send that via the listserv. And just a reminder that our next call, March 24th, is cancelled for ACMG. So our next call will be April 14th, and I will send out a reminder about that.
I do have a quick question. Not a question, but more of a comment, Jenny. Sorry, this is Matt Wright here from GCI, BCI team. So this is just just a request, really. That, I mean, people don't have to do it, but it might just help longer term for us. Is if people preferably could use the email address that they use elsewhere in the ClinGen system when they register for the GPM. Because in future, as Courtney said, in future, we're going to try and federate all the systems so they'll all link up and we'll be able to transfer potentially data, for instance, from the GCI, BCI and vice versa between the different tools. But it would help us if people use the same email address in different resources.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.